The courtroom smelled of old wood and fear. Bianca Reynolds sat perfectly still in her tailored navy suit, her hands folded on the defense table, her spine straight despite the weight of everything pressing down on her. She was a beautiful African-American woman with high cheekbones and intelligent brown eyes that had built an empire but couldn't see this betrayal coming. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, professional and dignified even now. Even as the prosecutor stood before the jury, his finger pointed at her like a weapon, his voice dripping with certainty. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is clear. Bianca Reynolds is a woman scorned. A woman who watched her marriage crumble and decided that if she couldn't have happiness, no one could. She attempted to murder Heather Monroe in cold blood, all because Ms. Monroe found love with Mr. Reynolds. Bianca felt her stomach turn. Found love. As if what Trevor and Heather had done was beautiful. As if they hadn't destroyed a family, hadn't ripped a little girl's world apart, hadn't stolen years of trust and devotion and ground them into dust. The jury looked at her with eyes that had already decided. 12 faces that saw a wealthy woman with means and motive. A billionaire who probably thought she could get away with anything. The prosecutor had spent 3 weeks painting that picture, stroke by careful stroke, until the portrait was complete. Jealous, vindictive, dangerous. Her lawyer, Patricia Holmes, had done her best. But how do you fight circumstantial evidence that lines up so perfectly? How do you prove you didn't do something when you were at the same event, when your fingerprints are on the serving spoons, when the victim points at you with tears streaming down her face? The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, looked down at the papers before her. Does the defense have anything else to add before I send the jury to deliberate? Patricia stood, her burgundy suit crisp despite the long hours. No, Your Honor. We rest on the evidence presented. Ms. Reynolds is innocent of these charges, and we trust the jury will see the truth. But Bianca could see the truth in Patricia's eyes. They both knew how this would end. The jury would deliberate for maybe a day wanting to seem thorough, and then they would come back with a guilty verdict. Bianca would be sentenced to prison for attempted murder. She would lose everything. Her company, her daughter, her freedom, her life. Trevor sat in the front row of the gallery, his face arranged in false sympathy. He was handsome in that way that had fooled her for 8 years, tall, well-built, with brown skin a shade lighter than hers and eyes that knew how to lie. Next to him sat Heather, pale and blonde and playing the victim so well. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, leaning into Trevor's shoulder for support. Bianca wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up and tell everyone what they really were. Liars. Schemers. People who had plotted her downfall because Trevor wanted full custody of Zoe and access to more of Bianca's money, and this was the fastest way to destroy her. But she had no proof. Only her word against theirs. And in this courtroom her word meant nothing. The judge lifted her gavel. Very well. The jury will now. The doors at the back of the courtroom burst open with a bang that echoed through the space like thunder. Everyone turned. The bailiff moved forward, hand on his belt. The judge's gavel froze in midair. A man stumbled through the doors. He was thin, with dark skin weathered by years of sun and hardship. His clothes were layers of mismatched items, a too large coat, pants held up with rope, shoes with holes. His gray beard was unkempt, his hair wild. He smelled of the streets, and people in the gallery shifted away from him instinctively. But his eyes were sharp and clear and full of purpose. "Don't kill her," he shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. "She's innocent. That woman is innocent." The courtroom exploded. The gallery erupted in gasps and whispers. The prosecutor shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Security," the judge called, her face red with anger. But the homeless man pushed forward, evading the bailiff who reached for him. He held something in his hands, a manila envelope, worn and dirty. "I have proof. I saw what they did. I saw them set her up." Bianca's heart stopped. She couldn't breathe. She stared at this stranger who had appeared like an answer to prayers she hadn't even known she was praying. The man reached the front of the courtroom before 2 bailiffs grabbed his arms. He thrust the envelope toward the judge. Please just look. They're lying. That man and that woman, they poisoned the food themselves. I saw them. I have pictures." The judge stood, her face a mixture of shock and fury and something else, curiosity. "Bailiffs, bring him to the bench." "Mr. Prosecutor, Ms. Holmes, approach." Bianca watched as her lawyer rushed forward. Her hands were shaking now. The jury sat frozen, their eyes wide. Trevor's face had gone pale. Heather's mouth hung open, the tissue forgotten in her hand. The homeless man stood before the judge, still restrained by the bailiffs but holding that envelope like it contained the secrets of the universe. His voice was steady now, certain. "My name is Jerome Patterson. I'm homeless, yes. I've been living on the streets for 3 years. But I'm not crazy and I'm not lying. I was there that night. I saw everything. And I have proof that Bianca Reynolds is innocent." The judge took the envelope with careful hands. She opened it. Her eyes scanned whatever was inside, and her expression changed. Slowly, like ice melting under sudden heat, her anger transformed into something else. She looked at Bianca. Then at Trevor and Heather. Then back at Jerome Patterson, the homeless man who had just stopped a trial with 5 words. "Don't kill her, she's innocent." "We're going to take a recess," the judge said, her voice tight. "Everyone remain in the courtroom. No one leaves. Bailiffs make sure of it. Mr. Patterson, you're going to tell me everything. And God help anyone in this room who has lied under oath." Bianca felt tears on her face for the first time since the trial began. She didn't know who this man was. She didn't know why he had come. But as he glanced back at her, his eyes kind despite the hardness of his life, she understood one thing clearly. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes in rags and carries proof in a dirty envelope. Sometimes it arrives just in time, when all hope seems lost, with words that change everything. "Don't kill her. She's innocent." Bianca Reynolds was about to discover that truth had a way of surviving, even when buried under lies. And revenge, when it came, would be sweeter than anything she could have planned herself. 6 months earlier, Bianca Reynolds stood in her corner office on the 40th floor of the building she owned, looking out over the city that had watched her rise from nothing to everything. The skyline stretched before her, glass and steel catching the afternoon light, and she felt the satisfaction that came from building an empire with her own hands. Her company, Reynolds Tech Solutions, was worth $3 billion. She had started it in her garage 10 years ago with $5,000 in savings and a dream to create software that would change how businesses manage their data. Now her programs ran in companies across the country. She employed 2,000 people. She had patents and awards and respect that she had earned through late nights and hard work and refusing to accept no for an answer. And she had done it all while being a wife and a mother. Bianca touched the framed photo on her desk. It showed her, Trevor, and their daughter Zoe at the beach last summer. Zoe was 5 years old with her father's light brown skin and her mother's bright smile. In the photo they looked perfect, happy, like a family that had everything. She remembered when she first met Trevor Reynolds at a business conference 8 years ago. He had been charming and supportive, working as a financial consultant. He had seemed impressed by her ambition. He had told her he wanted a strong woman, someone who knew her worth. After a whirlwind romance, they married within a year. For a while it had been good. Trevor supported her business, at least in words. He stayed home with Zoe when she traveled for deals. He attended company events and smiled at her side. He told people how proud he was of her success. But looking back now, standing in her office with the afternoon sun warm on her face, Bianca could see the small cracks that had appeared over the last year. Little things that she had ignored because she was busy, because she trusted him, because she didn't want to believe what they might mean. Trevor started coming home later. He claimed it was work, that he had new clients demanding his time. But his phone bills showed hours of calls to the same number. When she asked about it once, he snapped at her, told her she was being paranoid, said she spent more time at the office than with him anyway. He became distant in bed. Their intimacy, once frequent and comfortable, dried up. He made excuses. He was tired, stressed. He turned away from her at night, his back a wall she couldn't climb. He started small fights about nothing. The way she loaded the dishwasher. Her choice of weekend plans. Whether they really needed to attend another charity event. Everything she did seemed to annoy him, though he couldn't explain why. And then there was Heather Monroe. Bianca hired her 6 months ago as Trevor's personal assistant to help organize his schedule and paperwork for his consulting business. Heather was 28, blonde, and always smiling. She was efficient with the files and cheerful in emails. Trevor had interviewed her and said she was perfect for the job. Bianca had no reason to question it then. She was too busy managing a merger with another tech company. Too focused on quarterly reports and product launches. Too trusting of the man she had married, the father of her child, the person who slept beside her every night. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Trevor, "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." It was the 3rd time this week. Bianca felt something cold settle in her stomach. She picked up her phone and typed back, "Again? You said you'd be home for dinner with Zoe." The response came quickly, "Can't help it. Client emergency. Tell Zoe I'm sorry." There was no warmth in the message. No, I love you, or I'll make it up to you, or any of the words he used to say. Just facts. Cold and distant, like she was an appointment he was canceling. Bianca set down her phone and made a decision. She was flying to Seattle tomorrow for a conference, scheduled to be gone for 3 days. But maybe she wouldn't go. Maybe she would cancel the trip and see what Trevor did when he thought she was away. The thought made her feel sick. She wasn't that woman. She wasn't someone who checked phones or followed her husband or doubted his word. She had built a billion-dollar company on trust and partnerships. She had always believed that people showed you who they were if you gave them the chance. But Trevor had been showing her something for months now, and she had been too proud or too scared to look directly at it. That evening, Bianca came home to their house in the suburbs, a beautiful 5-bedroom property with a pool and garden that Zoe loved. She found her daughter playing in the living room with her dolls, her natural curls bouncing as she acted out some elaborate story. "Mommy?" Zoe jumped up and ran to her, and Bianca scooped her into a hug that felt like the only real thing in her life right now. "Hi, baby. Did you have a good day?" "Mrs. Chin took me to the park. I went on the big slide." "Where's Daddy?" The question hurt more than it should have. "Daddy has to work late tonight. But I'm here. How about we make dinner together? You can help me cook." Zoe's face lit up. "Can we make pancakes? For dinner?" Bianca laughed. "Sure. Why not?" They spent the evening in the kitchen, making pancakes in silly shapes while Zoe told her about school and friends and everything in her 5-year-old world. Bianca listened and laughed and tried to push away the growing fear in her chest. After putting Zoe to bed, Bianca sat alone in the living room. The house felt too big and too quiet. She picked up her phone and opened her calendar. The Seattle conference. She could miss it. Her team could handle the presentation without her. She sent an email to her assistant. "Cancel my Seattle trip. Something's come up at home. I'll join the conference remotely if needed." Then she texted Trevor, "Actually, I'm canceling my Seattle trip. I'll be home this week after all." She watched the screen. Watched the 3 dots appear that meant he was typing. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. "Oh, okay, great. See you tonight then." Something in those words felt wrong. Not happy that she would be home. Not excited to have extra time together. Just acknowledgement. Like she had just complicated his plans. Bianca went upstairs to her bedroom, the master suite they had decorated together when they bought this house 5 years ago. Everything in it spoke of the life they had built. Photos on the walls. His clothes in the closet next to hers. The bed they shared. She lay down on her side of the bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would know. Tomorrow, when Trevor thought she was on a plane to Seattle, she would see what he really did with his time. Part of her hoped she was wrong. Hoped that all her suspicions were just paranoia, that Trevor really was working late, that the distance between them was just a rough patch every marriage went through. But deep down, in the place where she had learned to trust her instincts in business, Bianca already knew the truth. She just hadn't wanted to face it yet. The front door opened around 11. She heard Trevor's footsteps on the stairs, slow and quiet, like he was trying not to wake her. He slipped into the bathroom and showered. When he finally came to bed, he smelled of soap and cologne and he didn't touch her. Just laid on his side of the bed, his back to her in the darkness. "Good night," she whispered. "Night," he said, and nothing else. Bianca closed her eyes and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tomorrow would change everything. She just didn't know yet how much would be destroyed in the process. In the darkness, in the house she had bought with her success, lying next to the man she had trusted with her heart, Bianca Reynolds felt the first real crack in her perfect life. And she knew with certainty that by this time tomorrow, that crack would have split everything wide open. The next morning, Bianca woke up early. Trevor was already gone, his side of the bed cold. A note on his pillow said, "Had to go in early. Have a safe flight. Love you. Love you." The words looked like a lie written in his handwriting. Bianca got Zoe ready for school, dropped her off, and then drove to her office. She went through the motions of her morning meetings, her mind only half present. Her assistant, Rachel, asked if she was feeling okay. "Fine," Bianca said. "Just tired." At noon, she told Rachel she wasn't feeling well and was going home early. Then she drove to her house in the suburbs, parked a block away where her car wouldn't be visible, and walked back to her own home like a stranger. Her hands shook as she unlocked the front door. The house was quiet. Empty. She stood in the foyer, listening to the silence, feeling foolish. Maybe Trevor really was at work. Maybe she was paranoid and destroying her own marriage with suspicion. She walked through the house, checking rooms. Everything was normal. Clean. Untouched. She went upstairs, her feet silent on the carpeted steps. Their bedroom door was closed. She opened it. Nothing. The bed was made, the room tidy. She checked the bathroom, the closet. Everything in its place. Relief started to flood through her. She had been wrong. Trevor was faithful, just distant because of stress or work or... A sound. Faint but unmistakable. Coming from down the hall. From the guest bedroom that they never used, the one with its own bathroom and lock on the door for privacy when her mother visited. Bianca's relief turned to ice. She walked toward the sound, each step feeling like it took a lifetime. The guest bedroom door was closed. She pressed her ear against it. Voices. Low and intimate. A woman's laugh, soft and familiar. Trevor's voice, saying something she couldn't make out. She tried the handle. Locked. For a moment, Bianca just stood there. She could walk away right now. She could pretend she didn't hear anything. She could save herself from whatever was on the other side of this door. But she didn't. She knocked. Hard. 3 times. The voices inside stopped abruptly. Silence. Then scrambling sounds. Trevor, Bianca called, her voice steady and cold. Open this door. More sounds. Whispered panic. Footsteps. Trevor. I know you're in there. Open the door now, or I'm calling the police and reporting an intruder in my house. A long pause. Then the lock clicked. The door opened a crack. Trevor stood there in his boxer shorts and nothing else. His hair was messy. His face was flushed. Behind him, Bianca could see the bed, the sheets tangled. Could see a woman pulling on clothes in a panic, her blonde hair unmistakable. Heather. For a second, nobody moved. The 3 of them frozen in this moment that would split Bianca's life into before and after. Then Bianca pushed the door fully open. She looked at Trevor, at the man she had married 8 years ago. At the father of her child. At the person she had trusted with everything. Get out, she said quietly. Bianca, wait, Trevor started. Get out. Her voice was still quiet, but something in it made him step back. Both of you. Get dressed and get out of my house. Heather was crying now, pulling on her blouse with shaking hands. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm so sorry, we didn't mean. I don't care what you meant. Bianca looked at her, at this woman she had hired, who had smiled at her during family dinners, who had played with Zoe at company events. You have 5 minutes to leave before I have you arrested for trespassing. This is my house too, Trevor said, trying to sound firm but his voice cracked. Bianca laughed. It was a harsh sound with no humor in it. This house is in my name only. I bought it with my money before we got married. You have no legal claim to it. So yes, I can have you both arrested. 5 minutes. She turned and walked downstairs, her legs somehow still working even though her whole body felt numb. She sat on the couch in the living room, staring at nothing, listening to the frantic sounds above her as they got dressed. This was her home. Her sanctuary. The place where she had raised her daughter. And they had violated it in the worst way possible, in a guest bedroom that was supposed to be for family, with the sheets she had bought and washed and made with her own hands. Trevor came down first. He was fully dressed now, his shirt buttoned wrong, his shoes untied. He stood in the living room doorway, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. How long? Bianca asked. What? How long have you been sleeping with my employee? He flinched at the word, my. Because that's what Heather was. Bianca's employee. Someone who worked for the company Bianca built. 6 months, he said finally. 6 months. Half a year. Since the day she hired Heather. Since the day Trevor interviewed her and said she was perfect for the job. You planned this, Bianca said, the realization hitting her. You chose her. Interviewed her. Hired her to work for me so you could. No, it wasn't like that. Just happened. We were working together and... in my house. Bianca stood up now and Trevor backed away from the look on her face. In my house, in the bed I paid for while our daughter was at school. While I was at work making the money that pays for everything you have. That's not fair, Trevor said, and there was anger in his voice now. I've supported your career. I've raised Zoe while you were traveling. I've sacrificed. You've sacrificed? Bianca's voice rose for the first time. I built a billion-dollar company while pregnant. I worked through morning sickness to close deals. I pumped breast milk in airport bathrooms between meetings. I did school drop-offs and pickups and doctor appointments and business calls at midnight. And you sacrificed. Heather appeared behind Trevor, her face blotchy from crying. She wouldn't meet Bianca's eyes. Both of you leave now. We need to talk about this, Trevor said. About Zoe, about? My lawyer will talk to you. That's the only communication you'll get from me. And Heather. Bianca looked at the younger woman. You're fired. Security will pack your things and mail them. If you come near my building again, I'll have you arrested. You can't fire me for this, Heather said weakly. I can fire you for anything I want. I own the company. And sleeping with your boss's husband and carrying on an affair using company time and resources? Yes, I can absolutely fire you for that. Now get out. They left. Bianca heard the front door close. Heard Trevor's car start and drive away. And then she was alone in her house that didn't feel like home anymore. She stood in the living room for a long time just breathing. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't break anything. She just stood there, feeling like someone had reached into her chest and torn out her heart and crushed it. Her phone rang. Rachel, her assistant. Bianca? Are you okay? You left so suddenly. Rachel, I need you to do something for me. Call my lawyer. Tell him I need to see him today. Tell him it's urgent. It's about my marriage. Pause. Okay. I'll call him now. Bianca, if you need anything. I need a divorce lawyer. The best one we know. And I need someone to look into Heather Monroe's employment contracts and find every legal reason I have to terminate her immediately. Done. I'll handle it. Bianca hung up and walked upstairs. She went to the guest bedroom and stripped the bed, throwing everything into garbage bags. She cleaned the room like she was erasing evidence of a crime. In a way she was. When everything was clean and the room looked untouched again, she sat on the bare mattress and finally let herself feel it. The betrayal. The humiliation. The pain of 8 years of marriage ending in the cruelest way possible. But underneath the pain was something else. Something harder and colder. Anger. Not the hot kind that made you scream and break things. The cold kind that made you plan and wait and execute. Trevor had destroyed their marriage. He had done it in her house with her employee, while spending her money and living the life her success had built. He thought she would break. Thought she would fall apart. Thought she would be the weak one in this situation. He was wrong. Bianca Reynolds had built an empire from nothing. She had fought and clawed and earned everything she had. And she would fight now harder than she had ever fought before. Trevor wanted a divorce? He would get one. But it would be on her terms. And when it was over, he would understand what it meant to betray a woman who knew how to win. She picked up her phone and made another call. Mom? Can you pick up Zoe from school today and keep her tonight? Something's happened with Trevor. I need to handle some things. Her mother's voice was warm and worried. Of course, baby. What happened? I'll tell you later. Just please take care of Zoe. Don't let Trevor near her until I call you. Bianca, you're scaring me. I'm okay, Mama. I promise. I just need tonight to figure things out. I love you. After hanging up, Bianca walked through her house one more time. She went to the master bedroom and started packing Trevor's things. Every shirt, every pair of pants, every shoe. She packed it all into suitcases and boxes and carried them downstairs to the garage. By the time she was done, the sun was setting. Trevor's half of the closet was empty. His bathroom products were gone. His bedside table was cleared. Every trace of him removed from her bedroom like he had never existed there at all. She called him. He answered on the first ring. Bianca, please, we need to talk about. Your things are in the garage. You have until tomorrow morning to pick them up. After that, I'm donating everything to charity. Don't come into the house. Don't try to see Zoe until my lawyer contacts you. If you show up here, I'll call the police. You can't keep me from my daughter. I'm not keeping you from her. I'm keeping you away from me. My lawyer will arrange custody discussions. Until then, stay away from my house, my office, and my family. She hung up while he was still talking. Then she blocked his number. The house was quiet again. Clean. Empty. Like he had never been there. Bianca walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. She stood at the window overlooking her backyard, watching the last light fade from the sky. Her marriage was over. Her trust was broken. Her perfect life had shattered into a million pieces. But she was still standing, still breathing, still here. And tomorrow she would start building something new. Not a marriage. Not a partnership based on lies and betrayal. But something better. Something that was all hers. Something nobody could take from her. Tomorrow the war would begin. And Bianca Reynolds had never lost a fight in her life. She wasn't about to start now. Trevor hired a lawyer named Harold Winters, a man known for taking large divorce settlements from wealthy wives. Bianca found this out from her own lawyer, Richard Pierce, who sat across from her in his downtown office the day after she kicked Trevor out. He's going aggressive, Richard said, sliding a folder across his desk. Winters is claiming Trevor contributed significantly to your business success and deserves compensation beyond standard divorce settlement. Bianca read the documents, her face expressionless. Trevor was asking for half of everything. Half her company, half her houses, half her investments, and primary custody of Zoe. He wants my daughter, she said quietly. He's using her as leverage. Winters knows the company matters to you, so he's asking for Zoe to force you into giving him more money to keep her. Can he win? Richard leaned back in his chair. He was 55 with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many ugly divorces. Honestly? No. You built the company before you met him. You have patents and documentation proving it was entirely your work. Your prenuptial agreement is solid. He signed away any claim to the business. As for custody, you're the primary caregiver. You've never missed a school event or doctor's appointment. You're the one with a stable home and income. Then what's his angle? He's hoping you'll settle. Give him money to make him go away quietly. The longer this drags out, the more expensive it gets for everyone. And the media attention could hurt your company's reputation. He knows this. Bianca set down the papers. I won't settle. I won't give him a penny more than the prenup requires. And I won't negotiate my time with Zoe. It's going to be ugly. Let it be ugly. He betrayed me. He carried on an affair in my house with my employee. I have security footage of her entering the house on days I was traveling. I have phone records. I have evidence. Richard nodded slowly. Then we fight. But Bianca, you need to prepare yourself. He's going to say terrible things about you. He'll paint you as a workaholic who neglected him and your daughter. He'll make himself the victim. Let him try. The divorce proceedings started the following week. Trevor's lawyer filed motions claiming Bianca was an unfit mother who prioritized work over family. They submitted testimony from Heather, who claimed Bianca was abusive and controlling. They painted Trevor as a devoted father who had sacrificed his own career to support his wife's ambitions. It was all lies, and Bianca had proof. Her lawyers presented evidence of Trevor's affair. Photos of him and Heather at hotels. Credit card statements showing expensive dinners and gifts he bought her with money from their joint account. Text messages between them discussing when Bianca would be out of town, so they could be together. They presented Zoe's school records showing Bianca attended every event. Medical records showing she took Zoe to every appointment. Testimony from teachers, neighbors, and friends about Bianca's devotion to her daughter. They presented the prenuptial agreement Trevor signed, clearly stating the business was Bianca's alone. Financial records showing Bianca was the sole income source. Trevor's consulting business barely broke even. Trevor's case fell apart piece by piece. But he didn't stop. If anything, he got more desperate. He started showing up at Zoe's school, trying to take her during Bianca's custody time. The school called the police. A restraining order was issued. He went to the media. Gave interviews claiming Bianca was vindictive and cruel. Said she was destroying him because he found happiness with someone else. The tabloids ate it up. Headlines appeared, "Billionaire Wife's Revenge," and "Tech Mogul's Bitter Divorce." Bianca's company stock dropped 3%. Clients called asking about the stability of leadership. Board members questioned whether the drama would affect business. But Bianca didn't break. She issued one statement through her company's PR team. These are private family matters being handled through appropriate legal channels. Reynolds Tech remains focused on serving our clients and maintaining excellence. Then she went back to work. Closed 2 major deals. Launched a new product line. Showed everyone that her personal life wouldn't affect her professional success. Meanwhile, Heather Monroe found herself unemployed and radioactive. No tech company would hire her after word spread about the affair. She burned through her savings paying rent while Trevor, who had promised to take care of her, was too busy fighting for Bianca's money to help. 3 months into the divorce, Heather showed up at Trevor's apartment. Bianca found out about it from her private investigator, who had been documenting everything. They had a fight, the investigator reported. Neighbors heard shouting. Heather left crying. Apparently Trevor told her he couldn't afford to support her right now because the divorce was taking all his resources. Bianca felt nothing hearing this. No satisfaction. No sympathy. They had made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. The divorce dragged on for 4 months. 4 months of court appearances, lawyers' meetings, and depositions. 4 months of Trevor trying every tactic to get more money. 4 months of Bianca standing firm and refusing to give in. Finally, the judge had enough. "Mr. Reynolds," Judge Morrison said during the final hearing, her voice sharp with impatience. "You signed a prenuptial agreement. You knew what you were signing. The evidence clearly shows your wife built her business independently and has been the primary caregiver for your daughter. You're entitled to the settlement specified in the prenup and nothing more. As for custody, given your recent behavior and the restraining order, Ms. Reynolds will have primary custody with supervised visitation for you until you can demonstrate stability. Trevor's face went red. This is unfair. I gave up my career for her. You gave up nothing, the judge said coldly. Your financial records show minimal income from your consulting business before and during the marriage. Ms. Reynolds supported you financially while building her company. You then had an affair with her employee in her home. You've shown poor judgment and lack of character. Be grateful you're getting anything at all. The gavel came down. The divorce was final. Bianca walked out of the courtroom with Richard at her side. She felt lighter than she had in months, like someone had finally removed a weight she had been carrying. You won, Richard said. Completely. No, Bianca corrected. I survived. There's a difference. Trevor was required to pay her back for money he spent on Heather from their joint account, nearly $50,000 in hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts. He was given a settlement of $200,000 from their marital assets as specified in the prenup, a fraction of what he had demanded. He was granted supervised visitation with Zoe every other weekend until he could prove he had stable housing and employment. Bianca got everything else. The house. Full custody. Her company untouched. Her dignity intact. She drove home that evening to find her mother waiting with Zoe. Her daughter ran to her, oblivious to the legal battle that had just concluded. Mommy? Grandma made cookies. That's wonderful, baby. Bianca held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. Is Daddy coming to dinner? Bianca and her mother exchanged glances. Not tonight, sweetheart. But you'll see Daddy soon. I promise. After putting Zoe to bed, Bianca sat with her mother in the kitchen. The same kitchen where she had made pancakes the night before she caught Trevor. It felt like a lifetime ago. How do you feel? Her mother asked. Empty, Bianca admitted. I won. I got everything I wanted legally. But I still feel like I lost something. You lost 8 years. You lost trust. You lost the future you thought you would have. Yes. Her mother took her hand. But you kept yourself. You kept your strength. You kept your daughter. And you showed him he can't destroy you. That matters, baby. That matters more than anything. Bianca nodded, tears finally falling. Her mother held her while she cried, the way she used to when Bianca was small and the world felt too big and scary. But Bianca wasn't small anymore. She was a survivor. A fighter. A woman who had just walked through fire and come out on the other side. The divorce was over. Trevor was out of her life except for supervised visits with Zoe. Heather was gone, unemployed and alone. Everything should have been finished. But Bianca would soon discover that some stories don't end when you think they do. Some enemies don't stop just because they lost. And some revenge plots are just beginning. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Bianca attended the annual charity gala for children's education, an event she had sponsored for the past 5 years. It was held at the Grand Hotel downtown, a massive ballroom filled with business leaders, politicians, and wealthy donors. Bianca wore a burgundy gown, her natural hair styled in elegant twists, her jewelry simple but expensive. She went alone. She had been alone a lot lately by choice. Dating felt impossible when her divorce was still fresh in the news. Trust felt impossible when the person she had trusted most had betrayed her. So she focused on work and Zoe and rebuilding her life one day at a time. The gala was crowded and loud. Bianca made her rounds, talking to donors and board members, smiling for photos, writing checks for the charity. It was exhausting but necessary. Her company's reputation was important, and being seen supporting good causes helped remind everyone that she was more than just divorce headlines. She was standing near the buffet table when she saw them. Trevor and Heather across the room. Together. Bianca's heart skipped. What were they doing here? This was her event. Her charity. Her space. Trevor saw her looking. He said something to Heather and they both turned away, moving toward the bar. Bianca forced herself to breathe. They had as much right to be here as anyone. The gala was open to anyone who bought tickets. She wouldn't let their presence ruin her evening. She turned back to the buffet, selecting small plates of appetizers she didn't really want. A waiter offered her champagne. She took it gratefully. Mrs. Reynolds? A woman's voice behind her. Bianca turned. Heather stood there, her face pale, her blue eyes red-rimmed like she had been crying. It's Ms. Reynolds now, Bianca said coldly. And you're not welcome to speak to me. I know. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say. Heather's voice broke. I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened and I made terrible choices and I've lost everything because of it. Good, Bianca said simply. Heather flinched. I deserve that. But please, I'm trying to make things right. I'm trying to find work to rebuild my life. Trevor and I aren't together anymore. He left me once the divorce was over. I was stupid to think he cared about me. Bianca felt nothing looking at this woman who had helped destroy her marriage. I don't care about your problems. You made your choices. Now live with them. I just thought, maybe eventually, you could forgive me? No. Bianca's voice was flat. I will never forgive you. Now please leave me alone. Heather's face crumpled, but she walked away. Bianca watched her go, then turned back to the buffet, her hands shaking slightly. She set down her plate and champagne glass, suddenly not hungry or thirsty. She needed air. She made her way through the crowd to the balcony, stepping outside into the cool evening. The city lights stretched below her and she breathed deeply, trying to calm her racing heart. She stayed outside for maybe 15 minutes. When she came back in, the ballroom seemed even more crowded. She made her way back through the room, stopping to talk to a few more donors, counting the minutes until she could leave. An hour later, the event started wrapping up. Bianca said her goodbyes and headed for the exit. She was almost to the door when she heard a crash behind her. People screamed. Bianca turned to see Heather collapsed on the floor near the buffet table, convulsing. People crowded around her. Someone shouted to call 911. Bianca stood frozen, watching as the scene unfolded. Hotel security pushed through the crowd. Someone who claimed to be a doctor knelt beside Heather, checking her pulse. She's not breathing right, the doctor said. This looks like poisoning. What did she eat? The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics loaded Heather onto a stretcher and rushed her out. The gala ended abruptly, everyone talking and speculating. Bianca left in the chaos, her mind spinning. Poisoning? Oh, what? She tried to push it from her mind. It wasn't her problem. Heather probably ate something bad or had an allergic reaction or something. It had nothing to do with Bianca. But the next morning, 2 police detectives showed up at her office. Ms. Reynolds? The taller one showed his badge. I'm Detective Andrews, this is Detective Hudson. We need to ask you some questions about last night's event. Bianca's assistant looked alarmed, but Bianca kept her face calm. Of course. Come into my office. She led them in and closed the door. What's this about? Heather Monroe was poisoned last night at the charity gala. She's in intensive care. We're investigating how it happened. I'm sorry to hear that, Bianca said carefully. But I don't know how I can help. You were at the event. We have security footage showing you near the buffet table where Ms. Monroe got her food. Cold dread settled in Bianca's stomach. I was near the buffet because I was getting food myself. Lots of people were near the buffet. It's a buffet. Ms. Reynolds, we're aware of your history with Ms. Monroe, Detective Hudson said. She was shorter, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Your divorce. The affair. The bad blood between you. I have no reason to hurt Heather, Bianca said firmly. I've moved on with my life. The divorce is over. I won everything I needed to win. Why would I risk everything I've built to hurt someone who's already out of my life? Revenge? Detective Andrews suggested. Anger? People do irrational things when they're hurt. I don't do irrational things. I'm a businesswoman. Everything I do is calculated and legal. The detectives exchanged glances. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. Am I being charged with anything? Not at this time. We're just gathering information. Then I'll have my lawyer present when I give any statements. They left, but Bianca knew this wasn't over. She called Richard Pierce immediately. They think I poisoned Heather, she told him. This is insane. Don't talk to them without me present, Richard said. I'll handle this. But it got worse. That afternoon, Heather woke up in the hospital. And she told police that Bianca poisoned her. She threatened me at the gala, Heather claimed in her statement. She said I would pay for what I did. Then I saw her near the food. The next thing I remember is collapsing and not being able to breathe. It was a lie. All of it. Bianca had said she wouldn't forgive Heather, but she hadn't threatened her. And she certainly hadn't poisoned anything. But the police found Bianca's fingerprints on the serving utensils at the buffet. Of course they did, she had served herself food. They found witnesses who said Bianca seemed angry after talking to Heather. Of course she seemed angry, Heather had helped destroy her marriage. They found motive. Means. opportunity. Everything they needed to build a case against her. Trevor gave a statement too. Bianca told me she would make us both pay, he claimed. During the divorce she was so angry. She said we had ruined her life and we would regret it. More lies. Bianca had said many things during the divorce but never that. A week later the district attorney filed charges. Attempted murder. Bianca was arrested at her office in front of her employees. She was handcuffed and let out while cameras flashed. The headlines were immediate: Billionaire tech CEO arrested for attempted murder. Her bail was set at $2 million. She paid it immediately and was released. But the damage was done. Her company's stock plummeted. Board members called emergency meetings. Clients threatened to cancel contracts. Everything she had built was falling apart because of a lie. Richard Pierce hired the best criminal defense attorney in the state, Patricia Holmes. Patricia was 50, black, brilliant, and had never lost a murder trial. They have circumstantial evidence, Patricia explained at their first meeting. Your presence at the event. Your fingerprints. Your motive. But it's not enough for a conviction. We can fight this. I didn't do it, Bianca said, her voice breaking. I didn't poison anyone. I know. But we need to prove it. The burden is on them to prove guilt, but juries are unpredictable. We need to create reasonable doubt. The trial was set for 2 months later. 2 months of Bianca's life in limbo. 2 months of fighting to keep her company together while facing prison. 2 months of supervised visits with Zoe, who was too young to understand why mommy was in trouble. Trevor got emergency custody during the trial, claiming Bianca was dangerous. It was the cruelest cut of all, losing her daughter because of a crime she didn't commit. Bianca lay awake at night in her big empty house, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. She had survived the affair, survived the divorce, built her life back up piece by piece, and now they were trying to take it all away with lies. She thought about running, taking Zoe and disappearing to another country where they couldn't find her. But that would make her look guilty. That would mean giving up everything she had worked for. Oh, she would fight. She would prove her innocence. She would show everyone that she wasn't capable of murder. But deep down in the darkness of her sleepless nights, Bianca was afraid. Afraid that the truth didn't matter as much as people wanted it to. Afraid that a wealthy black woman accused of a crime was already guilty in too many minds. Afraid that she would lose everything, her freedom, her daughter, her life, because of a lie told by people who had already destroyed her once. The trial was coming. And Bianca Reynolds had never been more terrified in her life. The prosecution's case against Bianca was led by District Attorney Rebecca Stone, a woman known for her aggressive tactics and high conviction rate. Stone was 45, ambitious, and saw the case as a career-making opportunity. A wealthy CEO on trial for attempted murder would guarantee headlines and political support for her rumored run for state attorney general. She built her case carefully over the next 6 weeks. Her investigators interviewed everyone at the gala. They tested the food from the buffet and found traces of arsenic in a serving dish of shrimp appetizers. They traced purchases of arsenic-based compounds to a pest control order made 3 months earlier for the grounds of Bianca's company building. The defendant had access to arsenic through her company's pest control service, Stone argued at a pretrial hearing. She had motive, means, and opportunity. The evidence is overwhelming. Patricia Holmes fought back at every turn. Arsenic compounds are common in commercial pest control. Thousands of businesses use them. My client having access proves nothing. And there's no evidence linking her to the actual poisoning of the food. But the circumstantial evidence kept piling up. Security footage showed Bianca near the buffet table for approximately 3 minutes. During those 3 minutes, the camera angle didn't clearly show her hands. Stone argued this was when Bianca poisoned the food. She reached for serving utensils, Stone said. She was alone at that section of the buffet. The timing matches perfectly with when Ms. Monroe later ate from that same dish. Bianca's fingerprints were on the serving spoon for the contaminated shrimp. Of course they were. She had served herself from that dish before Heather even approached the buffet. But the prosecution made it sound sinister. Witnesses came forward. A waiter testified that Bianca seemed angry and agitated after speaking with Heather. A guest claimed they heard Bianca mutter, "She'll be sorry," while standing near the buffet. Both testimonies felt coached, exaggerated, but the jury would hear them. Trevor testified at a deposition, his face arranged in false concern. Bianca changed during our divorce, he said. She became vindictive and cold. She destroyed Heather's career. She tried to keep me from my daughter. I wouldn't put it past her to want revenge. Did Ms. Reynolds ever threaten Ms. Monroe or yourself? Stone asked. Not directly. But she said things. Implied things. Made it clear she wanted us to suffer for what we did. Can you give an example? Trevor paused, like he was reluctant to hurt his ex-wife. During our last custody exchange, she told me that karma comes for everyone eventually. That people who destroy families will end up destroyed themselves. It felt like a threat. It was brilliant manipulation. Taking words that could mean anything and twisting them into evidence of murderous intent. Heather gave her testimony from her hospital bed, recorded on video. She looked small and fragile, her blonde hair limp against the pillow, her face pale. I approached Bianca at the gala to apologize, Heather said, her voice weak. I wanted to make peace. To tell her I was sorry for everything. And how did she respond? Stone asked gently. She was angry. She told me she would never forgive me. That I deserved everything bad that happened to me. Then she said. Heather paused, tears falling. She said I should have stayed away from the gala. That it was dangerous for me to be there. Did you interpret that as a threat? I didn't want to. I thought maybe she just meant emotionally dangerous. But then I got sick and I remembered seeing her near the food and I realized. Heather sobbed. She tried to kill me. Bianca watched the video in Patricia's office, her hands clenched so tight her nails cut into her palms. None of that is true. I never said any of those things. I know, Patricia said. But it's her word against yours. And she's the victim. Juries sympathize with victims. How do we fight this? We attack their credibility. We show their motive to lie. Trevor and Heather both benefit from you being convicted. He gets full custody of Zoe, and they eliminate you as an obstacle to being together publicly without shame. But proving a conspiracy to frame someone is harder than it sounds. Bianca's team worked around the clock to find evidence. They hired private investigators to follow Trevor and Heather. They subpoenaed phone records. They looked for any proof that this was a setup. They found nothing. No calls between Trevor and Heather coordinating a story. No financial records showing payments to false witnesses. No smoking evidence that proved Bianca was framed. Meanwhile, Bianca's life continued falling apart. Reynolds Tech's board of directors held an emergency meeting. 3 board members wanted her to step down as CEO during the trial. The negative publicity is hurting our stock price and client relationships, they argued. We need to distance the company from this situation. Bianca fought them. I built this company. I'm innocent. And I won't step down because of false accusations. She won the vote barely. But she knew her position was precarious. If she lost the trial, she would lose everything anyway. Clients started canceling contracts. 3 major deals fell through. Companies didn't want to associate with someone accused of attempted murder, no matter how innovative her software was. Her personal life was worse. Zoe asked why she couldn't come home. Daddy says you did something bad, her daughter said during a supervised phone call. He says you're sick and need help. Bianca's heart broke. Baby, mommy didn't do anything bad. This is all a misunderstanding. I promise I'll be home soon. But Zoe was only 5. She didn't understand courts and trials and false accusations. She just knew her mother wasn't there anymore. Bianca's mother tried to help. Stay strong, she said. The truth always comes out. But Bianca wasn't sure she believed that anymore. In business, she had learned that perception often mattered more than truth. That the story people believed was more powerful than the actual facts. Right now, the story everyone believed was that she was a wealthy, vindictive woman who had tried to murder her ex-husband's mistress. That story fit people's expectations. A scorned woman. An angry ex-wife. It was easy to believe, easy to understand, easy to condemn. The truth was more complicated. The truth was that she had been betrayed, divorced, and now framed. But complicated truths don't make good headlines. They don't satisfy people's desire for simple narratives with clear villains. 1 month before trial, Patricia sat Bianca down in her office. I'm going to be honest with you. The prosecution's case is strong. Circumstantial but strong. We have a good defense, but I can't guarantee a win. What are my chances? Patricia hesitated. 60-40. Maybe 50-50. Those aren't good odds. No, they're not. Stone is offering a plea deal. Reckless endangerment instead of attempted murder. 5 years instead of 20. I would have to admit guilt? Yes. Then no. I won't plead guilty to something I didn't do. Bianca, if you lose at trial, you could go to prison for 20 years. Zoe would grow up without you. Your company would be gone. Everything you've built would disappear. I know. But I won't lie and say I tried to kill someone when I didn't. I won't let Trevor and Heather win by making me admit to their lies. Patricia nodded slowly. Then we go to trial. And we fight with everything we have. The trial date was set. The media coverage intensified. Every day brought new headlines, new speculation, new commentary from people who didn't know her but had strong opinions about her guilt. Bianca prepared her testimony with Patricia. They went over every detail of that night. Every conversation. Every movement. Every moment near that buffet table. The jury needs to see you as human, Patricia coached. Not as a cold, wealthy CEO. They need to see a woman who was hurt but moved on with her life. A mother who loves her daughter. Someone incapable of murder. But Bianca felt cold inside. The months of accusations and investigations and losing everything had hardened something in her. She wasn't sure she could project warmth and vulnerability when all she felt was anger and exhaustion. The night before trial, Bianca sat alone in her house. Her big, empty, quiet house that used to feel like home but now felt like a museum of a life that didn't exist anymore. She thought about Zoe. About missing bedtime stories and school events and all the small moments that made up a childhood. About her daughter growing up thinking her mother was a criminal. She thought about Trevor and Heather, who had destroyed her marriage and now were trying to destroy her life completely. Who would win everything if she was convicted. Who would get to raise Zoe and poison her daughter's mind against her. And she thought about the trial starting tomorrow. About sitting in that courtroom while strangers decided her fate. About the possibility of losing everything, her freedom, her child, her future, because of a lie. But underneath the fear was something else. Something that had kept her going through every challenge in her life. The same stubborn determination that built a billion-dollar company from nothing. The same refusal to quit that got her through business school as a single parent. The same strength that survived betrayal and divorce. She would fight. Tomorrow and every day after she would fight. And somehow, some way the truth would matter. It had to. Because if it didn't, then everything Bianca Reynolds believed about justice and hard work and integrity was just a lie she had been telling herself her whole life. The trial would begin in the morning. And Bianca Reynolds would face it with the same courage that had carried her through everything else. Even if she was terrified. Even if the odds were against her. She would not break. She would not quit. She would not let them win. Not without a fight. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Bianca arrived with Patricia on the first day of trial. Cameras flashed. Microphones thrust toward her face. Questions shouted from every direction. Ms. Reynolds, did you try to kill Heather Monroe? Are you worried about going to prison? What do you want to say to your daughter? Bianca kept her head up and her face neutral, walking through the crowd with Patricia at her side. She wore a simple black suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back. Patricia had coached her on appearance. Look professional but not wealthy, serious but not cold, human but not weak. Inside the courtroom was packed. Every seat filled with reporters, curious public, and people who just wanted to watch a billionaire on trial. Bianca took her seat at the defense table, folding her hands, keeping her expression calm even though her heart raced. Trevor sat in the front row behind the prosecution. Next to him was Heather, looking fragile and pale in a cream-colored dress. They were holding hands. Bianca noticed this detail and felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, just a hollow emptiness where her feelings for them used to be. Judge Morrison entered. The same judge who had handled Bianca's divorce. She was a fair woman, stern but not unkind. Bianca hoped that would work in her favor. All rise, the bailiff called. The trial began with jury selection. It took 2 days to seat 12 jurors. 7 women, 5 men, ranging in age from 25 to 68. Patricia had fought to keep anyone who seemed overly sympathetic to victims, or had strong opinions about wealthy people. Stone fought to keep anyone who seemed moral and judgmental. In the end, they had a jury that could go either way. Stone's opening statement was powerful. She walked the jury through the timeline of events, painting Bianca as a woman consumed by revenge. Bianca Reynolds had everything, Stone said, pacing in front of the jury box. Money, success, power. But when her husband found happiness with another woman, she couldn't accept it. She divorced him and destroyed his career. She fired Heather Monroe and ruined her reputation. But that wasn't enough. She wanted more. She wanted them to suffer. Stone pointed at Bianca. On the night of the charity gala, Bianca Reynolds saw her opportunity. She approached the buffet table where she knew Heather Monroe would eat. She poisoned food with arsenic. And then she watched as Heather collapsed, nearly dying from the poison coursing through her body. The jury looked at Bianca. Some faces were skeptical. Others looked convinced already. The evidence will show that Bianca Reynolds had access to arsenic through her company, that her fingerprints were on the serving utensils, that she was near the food when it was poisoned, that she had every reason to want Heather Monroe dead. This isn't a mystery, ladies and gentlemen. This is attempted murder. And Bianca Reynolds is guilty. Patricia's opening was different. Calmer. More measured. What the prosecution wants you to believe is a story, Patricia said. A simple story with a clear villain. A wealthy, angry woman who tried to kill her rival. It makes sense. It's easy. She paused, looking each juror in the eye. But the truth isn't always simple. The truth is that Bianca Reynolds built a successful company through hard work. She survived betrayal with dignity. She moved on with her life. Why would she risk everything to hurt someone who was already out of her life? Patricia walked toward the prosecution table. The state's case is built on circumstantial evidence. Bianca was at a charity event attended by hundreds of people. Yes, she was near the buffet table, so were dozens of others. Yes, her fingerprints were on serving utensils, because she served herself food like everyone else. She turned back to the jury. The prosecution wants you to believe that a successful businesswoman, a devoted mother, a woman with everything to lose, would suddenly commit attempted murder at a public event with hundreds of witnesses and cameras. Does that make sense? Or does it make more sense that someone else wanted Bianca Reynolds to look guilty? The trial moved into witness testimony. Stone called the waiter who claimed Bianca seemed angry. A guest who said they heard her mutter threats. The hotel security manager who reviewed the footage. Each testimony was damaging. Each piece added to the story Stone was building. Patricia cross-examined them carefully. You said Ms. Reynolds seemed angry after speaking with Ms. Monroe? Patricia asked the waiter. Did you hear what was said? No. So you don't actually know if she was angry or just uncomfortable seeing her ex-husband's mistress? I guess not. And this guest who claims they heard Ms. Reynolds make threats, did they report it to anyone at the time? No. So they remembered the supposed threat only after they learned about the poisoning? Weeks later? Yes. Isn't it possible they misheard? Or misremembered? Or even made it up for attention? I suppose. Patricia was good. She chipped away at the credibility of each witness, creating small doubts. But Bianca could see the jury was still leaning toward conviction. The story was too neat. Too believable. The prosecution called their forensic expert, a toxicologist who explained how arsenic poisoning works. How much would be needed to cause Heather's symptoms. How it could be mixed into food without being detected. Could the arsenic have been in the shrimp before it arrived at the gala? Patricia asked on cross-examination. Unlikely. The caterer's kitchen would have noticed. But possible? Technically, yes. Could someone else have poisoned the food while Ms. Reynolds was away from the buffet? The timeline is tight, but yes, it's possible. So Ms. Reynolds isn't the only person who could have done this? Based purely on opportunity, no. But the evidence points to her. Trevor took the stand on the third day of trial. He wore a dark suit and looked serious, playing the role of concerned ex-husband. Stone led him through his testimony carefully. His relationship with Bianca. The affair. The divorce. Did Ms. Reynolds ever threaten you or Ms. Monroe? Stone asked. Not directly. But she said things that felt threatening. Like karma would get us. That we would regret what we did. How did that make you feel? Scared. Bianca is a powerful woman. I know how vindictive she can be. Patricia's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Reynolds, you had an affair with Ms. Monroe in your wife's home, correct? Yes. Using your wife's money? We shared finances. But you didn't contribute significantly to the household income, did you? Your consulting business earned less than $50,000 a year. Trevor's face flushed. I took care of our daughter. While having an affair with your assistant? That's not fair. What's not fair is betraying your wife and then trying to take her money and custody of her child. Isn't that what you tried to do during the divorce? I deserved compensation. The judge disagreed. You were awarded $200,000 in limited custody. Much less than you wanted, correct? Yes. So you would benefit greatly if Ms. Reynolds went to prison, wouldn't you? You would get full custody of Zoe. You would be the parent in control. That's not why I'm testifying. Are you sure? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you have every reason to want my client convicted. Trevor stumbled through his answers, and Bianca saw some jurors looking at him with skepticism. But the damage was done. His testimony had planted seeds of doubt about Bianca's character. Heather testified on the fourth day. She was still thin and pale from her hospitalization, and Stone made sure the jury saw how weak she looked. "Tell us what happened that night," Stone said gently. Heather described approaching Bianca at the gala. The conversation. Bianca's anger. "She told me I deserved everything bad that happened to me," Heather said, tears falling. "She said I should have stayed away. That it was dangerous for me to be there. Did you feel threatened?" "I didn't want to believe she would actually hurt me. But yes, I felt threatened." "What happened next?" "I went to the buffet. I was hungry and upset. I got some shrimp from the serving dish. They tasted fine. Normal. I ate maybe 5 or 6 pieces. Then what? About 20 minutes later I started feeling sick. Dizzy. My stomach hurt. Then I couldn't breathe. I remember collapsing. People screaming. And then everything went black." "How long were you hospitalized?" 2 weeks. The doctor said I nearly died. The arsenic damaged my kidneys. I'll have health problems for the rest of my life." The jury looked horrified. Some looked at Bianca with disgust. Patricia's cross-examination focused on inconsistencies. "Ms. Monroe, you claim Ms. Reynolds told you it was dangerous for you to be at the gala?" "Yes. But in your initial statement to police, you didn't mention that. You only added that detail weeks later." "I was confused. I remembered more as time passed." "Or did you embellish your story as you realized how bad it looked for Ms. Reynolds?" "No. I remembered more. Ms. Monroe, you had an affair with Ms. Reynolds' husband for 6 months before she discovered you, correct?" "Yes." "And you lied to her during that time? Smiled at her at company events while sleeping with her husband?" "I'm not proud of it." "So you're capable of lying when it benefits you?" "That's different." "Is it? You lied then to protect yourself. Isn't it possible you're lying now to get revenge on the woman who fired you and destroyed your career?" "No. She tried to kill me." "Or did you and Mr. Reynolds frame her to get custody of her daughter and eliminate her from your lives?" Stone objected. Judge Morrison sustained it. But the question hung in the air. The prosecution rested their case after 5 days. The evidence against Bianca was strong but not overwhelming. Circumstantial but damning. Patricia presented the defense's case. Character witnesses testified about Bianca's integrity. Business partners talked about her honesty. Zoe's teachers described her as a devoted mother. But none of it directly proved Bianca didn't poison the food. It just showed she was a good person who wouldn't do such a thing. The defense couldn't find anyone who saw someone else near the buffet tampering with food. Couldn't prove Trevor and Heather had conspired to frame her. Couldn't provide an alternative explanation for how the arsenic got into the shrimp. Bianca herself took the stand on the 8th day of trial. She answered Patricia's questions calmly, explaining her side of everything. "I didn't poison Heather Monroe," Bianca said, looking directly at the jury. "I had no reason to. My divorce was over. I had one custody of my daughter. My company was thriving. Why would I risk everything to hurt someone who was already out of my life?" But Stone's cross-examination was devastating. "Ms. Reynolds, you claim you had moved on. But you fired Ms. Monroe, didn't you? She had an affair with my husband. I couldn't work with her. You destroyed her career? I fired her. She destroyed her own career by making those choices. So you did want her to suffer consequences? Legal consequences, yes. Not physical harm. But you were angry?" "Of course I was angry. She helped destroy my marriage." "Angry enough to want revenge?" "No. Not that kind of revenge." Stone smiled. "Ms. Reynolds, isn't it true that you told Mr. Reynolds during your divorce that karma would get him and Ms. Monroe?" "I may have said something like that. I don't remember exactly. But you believed they deserved punishment?" "I believed the truth would come out. That's different than wanting to poison someone." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you decided to be the hand of karma yourself." The trial ended with closing arguments. Stone gave an impassioned speech about justice for victims. Patricia gave a logical argument about reasonable doubt. But Bianca could see it in the jurors' faces. They believed she was guilty. The evidence was too circumstantial to be certain, but the story made sense. Wealthy, angry woman tries to kill her rival. Simple. Clean. Satisfying. The jury went out to deliberate. Bianca sat with Patricia in a waiting room watching the clock. Hours passed. 6 hours. 8 hours. 10. Long deliberations can go either way, Patricia said. Either they're fighting over doubts, or 1 or 2 jurors are holding out against conviction. But Bianca knew. She knew in her bones that this was going badly. That 12 strangers were about to decide she was a murderer based on lies and circumstantial evidence and their own prejudices about wealthy women. After 12 hours, the judge called everyone back. "The jury is deadlocked," she announced. "We'll recess for the night and resume tomorrow." That night, Bianca couldn't sleep. She called her mother, who cried. She tried to call Zoe, but Trevor refused to put her on the phone. She sat alone in her house, staring at the walls, waiting for morning. Waiting for the moment when 12 strangers would decide if she spent the next 20 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. And she prayed, even though she wasn't sure she believed anymore, that somehow, something would save her. That somehow the truth would matter. That somehow justice would prevail. But hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Hope was dangerous when you were this close to losing everything. Tomorrow the jury would come back. Tomorrow they would announce their verdict. Tomorrow Bianca Reynolds would learn if she had any future left at all. The jury resumed deliberations the next morning. Bianca sat in the hallway outside the courtroom with Patricia, barely breathing. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a lifetime. "What are they arguing about in there?" Bianca asked. Patricia shook her head. "We can't know. But a long deliberation usually means someone has doubts. That's good for us." But Bianca didn't feel good about anything. Even if one or two jurors had doubts, would it be enough? Or would they eventually give in to pressure from the others? After 3 more hours, the bailiff called them back in. The jury had a question for the judge. Everyone assembled in the courtroom. The jury filed in, looking tired and frustrated. Judge Morrison read their question aloud. The jury asks, "If we believe Ms. Reynolds poisoned the food but cannot prove it beyond reasonable doubt based on the evidence presented, should we convict or acquit?" Patricia looked at Bianca with something like hope in her eyes. "That's good. They're questioning if the evidence is enough." Judge Morrison answered carefully. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you must be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt. If you have reasonable doubt, you must acquit. The standard is not, 'We think she probably did it.' The standard is, 'We are sure beyond reasonable doubt that she did it.'" The jury filed back out to continue deliberating. But now the media outside was buzzing. "Jury questions standard of proof" became the headline. Legal experts on TV debated what it meant. Another 4 hours passed. Then the jury sent another note. "We are still deadlocked. Some jurors believe the evidence is sufficient. Others believe there is reasonable doubt." Judge Morrison looked frustrated. "I'm going to give you all one more night to think. Sleep on it. Come back tomorrow morning with fresh minds. If you remain deadlocked, I may have to declare a mistrial." A mistrial. That meant doing this all over again. Another trial. Another few months of her life in limbo. Bianca felt sick at the thought. That night, she sat with her mother in her kitchen. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. Everything had been said. Everything had been done. Now it was just waiting. "No matter what happens tomorrow," her mother said finally, "you're still my daughter. You're still Zoe's mother. You're still you. This trial doesn't define you. If they convict me, I go to prison, Mama. Zoe grows up without me. Everything I built disappears. Then we fight the verdict. We appeal. We keep fighting until the truth comes out. And if the truth never comes out?" Her mother took her hand. "Then we live with it. But we don't give up. The women in our family don't give up." Bianca wished she had her mother's faith. But she was tired. So tired of fighting. Tired of being strong. Tired of pretending she wasn't terrified. The next morning, she dressed in another simple suit and drove to the courthouse with Patricia. The reporters were everywhere, smelling blood in the water. They waited in the courtroom. Trevor and Heather were there again, sitting close together. Bianca wondered if they were nervous too. If they were worried their lies might not be believed. After an hour, the bailiff announced the jury was ready. Bianca's heart stopped. This was it. After all the waiting, all the testimony, all the evidence, 12 strangers had made their decision. The jury filed in. Bianca tried to read their faces, but they were carefully neutral. None of them looked at her, which Patricia had said was usually a bad sign. Judge Morrison looked at them. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson, an older black woman who had seemed sympathetic during testimony, stood. "Your Honor, we have not. We remain deadlocked. 8 jurors believe the defendant is guilty. For have reasonable doubt. We cannot reach a unanimous decision." Bianca felt the room spin. 8 thought she was guilty. Only 4 believed she might be innocent. Judge Morrison sighed. "Very well. I'm declaring a mistrial. The defendant is released on continued bail. The prosecution may choose to retry the case. Stone stood immediately. The state will retry, Your Honor. Of course they would. They had been so close to a conviction. They wouldn't let it go now. Patricia leaned close to Bianca. This is actually good. We have more time to investigate, to find evidence. But Bianca barely heard her. She was looking at Trevor and Heather. They looked relieved. They thought they had won. One more trial and Bianca would be convicted. One more chance to destroy her completely. Outside, the media swarmed. Patricia made a brief statement. Ms. Reynolds maintains her innocence. We look forward to proving it at the next trial. Stone made her own statement. The state remains committed to seeking justice for Heather Monroe. We will present our case again with even stronger evidence. Stronger evidence. What stronger evidence could they possibly have? They had already thrown everything at Bianca. Unless they planned to manufacture more lies. The weeks after the mistrial were the darkest of Bianca's life. Her company was hemorrhaging money as clients continued leaving. Board members were openly discussing a vote of no confidence. Trevor had convinced the family court judge to continue his custody arrangement, keeping Zoe from Bianca except for supervised visits. Her mother tried to help. Her few remaining friends offered support. But Bianca felt herself sinking into a dark place she couldn't climb out of. She lay awake at night thinking about running. She had money offshore that Trevor didn't know about. She could disappear with Zoe to a country without extradition. Start over somewhere new. But that meant living as a fugitive. It meant Zoe growing up always looking over her shoulder. It meant admitting defeat. 1 month after the mistrial, Patricia called with an update. Stone is being even more aggressive this time. She's found new witnesses. People who claim you made threats against Heather that nobody mentioned in the first trial. Let me guess. People Trevor found for her? Probably. But we can't prove it. Bianca, I have to be honest. The second trial will be harder. Juries don't like mistrials. They see them as the system failing. Stone will paint you as someone who got lucky once but won't get lucky again. What are my chances now? Patricia hesitated. Honestly? Maybe 30%. The jury last time was 8-4 against you. That's bad. The next jury might not have even 4 people with doubt. So I should take a plea deal? Stone's offering the same deal. 5 years for reckless endangerment. 5 years in prison. Missing all of Zoe's childhood. Losing her company. Admitting to a crime she didn't commit. No, Bianca said firmly. I won't plead guilty. I'd rather fight and lose than admit to attempted murder. Then we go to trial again. Next month. The second trial was scheduled for exactly 6 weeks after the mistrial. The same judge. Likely a similar jury. The same lies and circumstantial evidence presented all over again. Bianca stopped sleeping. Stopped eating properly. Lost 15 pounds. Her mother threatened to move in with her because she was worried Bianca would hurt herself. I'm not going to do anything stupid, Bianca assured her. I'm just tired. But she was more than tired. She was breaking. The weight of the false accusations, the loss of her daughter, the destruction of her company, the endless legal battles, it was all crushing her piece by piece. 3 weeks before the second trial, her company's board voted. 7-3, they asked her to step down as CEO. It's temporary, they claimed. Just until this legal situation resolves. For the good of the company. Bianca knew what it meant. They were preparing for her conviction. Making sure the company would survive when she went to prison. She stepped down. Signed the papers. Watched the business she had built from nothing continue without her. 2 weeks before trial, Trevor filed new custody documents. Ms. Reynolds is mentally unfit to parent while facing criminal charges. Her stress and depression create an unsafe environment for our daughter. The family court judge agreed. Bianca's supervised visits were reduced to once a week, 2 hours, with a social worker present at all times. Zoe cried during their visits. Why can't I come home, Mommy? Bianca had no good answers. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her father is lying to keep her away? That sometimes bad people win and good people suffer? Soon, baby, Bianca promised, knowing it might be a lie. Soon you'll come home. 1 week before trial, Bianca sat in Patricia's office going over testimony again. But her heart wasn't in it. She felt defeated already. What was the point? They would present the same evidence. The prosecution would tell the same lies. Another jury would likely convict. You can't give up now, Patricia said. We're so close to trial. Close to losing, Bianca corrected. I'm going to prison, Patricia. We both know it. We don't know anything yet. Anything can happen at trial. But Bianca didn't believe in miracles anymore. She believed in evidence and facts and the harsh reality that circumstantial evidence was enough to convict when the story felt right to a jury. The night before the second trial, Bianca sat alone in her house. Her big empty house that felt like a tomb. She looked at photos of Zoe. At pictures from her company's early days. At memories of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. She thought about her mother's words. The women in our family don't give up. But what if giving up was the smart thing to do? What if fighting was just making everything worse? What if accepting defeat would somehow be easier than this endless pain? Her phone rang. Patricia. Are you ready for tomorrow? Bianca laughed bitterly. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. You matter. Your life matters. And I need you to walk into that courtroom tomorrow like you believe you're going to win. What if I don't believe it? Then fake it. Because the moment you give up, the moment you look defeated in front of that jury, we've lost. You have to fight, Bianca. Even when it feels hopeless. After they hung up, Bianca sat in the darkness for a long time. She thought about everything she had lost. Everything she might still lose. But she also thought about Zoe. About her daughter growing up believing her mother was a murderer. About the day years from now, when Zoe would ask about the trial and want to know the truth. What would Bianca tell her? That she gave up? That she quit fighting? No. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever verdict came, Bianca would fight. Not because she believed she would win. But because her daughter needed to see that her mother didn't surrender. That even when the world was unfair, even when people lied and systems failed, you kept standing up. That was the only legacy Bianca had left to give. Tomorrow the second trial would begin. Tomorrow she would face the same lies and accusations. Tomorrow she would probably lose. But she would lose fighting. And maybe, somewhere in that fight, a miracle would happen. Maybe the truth would somehow come out. Maybe justice would somehow prevail. It was a thin hope. A desperate hope. But it was all she had left. Bianca Reynolds closed her eyes and prayed one last time for something, anything, to save her from the injustice that was about to destroy her life. And in the morning, she would walk into that courtroom with her head high, even as her heart broke, ready to face whatever came next. Because that's what survivors do. They survive. Even when surviving feels impossible. The courtroom was even more packed for the second trial. The media frenzy had intensified during the weeks between trials. Everyone wanted to see if Bianca Reynolds would finally be convicted. Bianca sat at the defense table wearing a gray suit, her face carefully composed. She looked thinner than before, her eyes tired but determined. Patricia sat beside her, papers organized, ready for battle. Judge Morrison called the court to order. We're here for the retrial of the state versus Bianca Reynolds. Let's begin with jury selection. It took another 2 days to seat a new jury. This time, 9 women and 3 men. Patricia had tried to screen out anyone who seemed too convinced by the media coverage, but it was impossible. Everyone knew about the case. Everyone had opinions. Stone's opening statement was similar to before, but sharper. More confident. She knew she had almost won last time. The jury in the previous trial voted 8-4 for conviction, Stone told the new jury. 8 people saw the evidence and knew Bianca Reynolds was guilty. Only 4 had doubts. This time, I'm going to make sure you have no doubts at all. She presented the same evidence but with additional witnesses. A coworker who claimed Bianca once said she wanted to destroy Heather. A friend of Trevor's who swore Bianca had murder in her eyes during the divorce. All lies Bianca knew. But lies that fit the narrative. Lies that made her look guilty. Patricia's opening was more aggressive this time. The prosecution wants you to believe their story so badly that they keep finding new witnesses who suddenly remember things that nobody mentioned in the first trial. Convenient, isn't it? Almost like they're being coached to say exactly what the prosecution needs. But Bianca could see some jurors frowning at Patricia's implications. Suggesting the prosecution was manufacturing evidence was a serious accusation. One that could backfire if they couldn't prove it. The trial proceeded much like before. Trevor testified again, his lies polished now. Heather testified again, her tears more convincing. The forensic evidence was presented again, the timeline laid out again. Patricia fought hard on cross-examination, but there were no new revelations. No smoking gun that proved Bianca's innocence. Just the same reasonable doubts, the same alternative theories, the same pleas to consider that circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. On the 7th day of trial, after both sides had presented their cases, Stone stood to give her closing argument. Ladies and gentlemen, The defense wants you to believe this is complicated. That there are unanswered questions. That maybe someone else poisoned Heather Monroe. But the truth is simple. Bianca Reynolds had motive, revenge. She had means, access to arsenic through her company. She had opportunity, she was alone at the buffet where the poisoned food was placed. And she had no alibi for the exact moments when the crime occurred. Stone walked slowly in front of the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. Don't let a clever defense attorney confuse you with doubt. The evidence is clear. Bianca Reynolds is guilty of attempted murder. It's time to hold her accountable. Patricia stood for the defense's closing, but Bianca could see the jury's faces. They looked convinced. This was over. The verdict would be guilty this time. Patricia talked about reasonable doubt. About the burden of proof. About how circumstantial evidence wasn't enough to destroy a woman's life. But her words felt hollow in the face of Stone's confidence. Judge Morrison looked at the jury. You've heard all the evidence. Both sides have made their arguments. It's now your duty to deliberate and reach. The courtroom doors burst open. Everyone turned. A man stumbled through the doors, dirty and disheveled. He wore layers of ragged clothing, his beard unkempt, his hair wild. He smelled of the streets and people in the gallery recoiled. Wait, the man shouted, his voice cracking. Please wait. Don't send the jury out yet. The bailiff moved toward him, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. Who are you? My name is Jerome Patterson, the man said, breathing hard like he had been running. I'm homeless. I know you don't want to listen to me, but please you have to. That woman is innocent. Bianca Reynolds didn't poison anyone. Stone shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Don't kill her. Jerome shouted, and his voice echoed through the silent courtroom. The phrase that would become the title of this story. She's innocent. I saw what happened. I saw who really poisoned the food. Judge Morrison's face was red with anger, but there was also curiosity in her eyes. Security, restrain this man but don't remove him yet. Mr. Patterson, you're disrupting my courtroom. I'm sorry, Jerome said, his voice shaking. I know I shouldn't be here like this, but I've been trying to reach someone for weeks. I called the police. I called the DA's office. Nobody would listen to a homeless man. Nobody would believe me. But I can't let this woman go to prison for something she didn't do. Bianca stared at him, her heart pounding. Who was this man? Why was he here? Judge Morrison looked at Stone and Patricia. Approached the bench. Mr. Patterson, you stay right there. The three of them spoke in hushed tones at the bench. Bianca watched, unable to hear, barely daring to hope. Jerome Patterson stood in the center of the courtroom, restrained by two bailiffs but calm now, waiting. After several minutes, Judge Morrison turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a recess. Please wait in the jury room. Do not discuss the case. This court is in recess. The jury filed out, looking confused. The judge turned to Jerome. Mr. Patterson, you're claiming you have evidence relevant to this case? Yes, Your Honor. I was there that night. At the charity gala. Not inside, I couldn't afford a ticket. But I was outside. I live on the streets near that hotel. And I saw things. Things that prove Bianca Reynolds is innocent. Stone's face was pale. Your Honor, this is a publicity stunt. The defense probably planted. I don't know these people. Jerome said. I don't know Bianca Reynolds or her lawyers. But I know what I saw. And I have proof. What kind of proof? The judge asked. Jerome reached into his coat and pulled out a dirty manila envelope. Pictures. And a written account of everything I witnessed. I kept it all in case someone finally listened. Judge Morrison took the envelope carefully. She opened it. Her expression changed as she looked through the contents. Slowly, her anger transformed into shock. Mr. Patterson, you're telling me you've had this evidence since the night of the incident? Yes, ma'am. I tried to come forward. But nobody cares what a homeless man has to say. Police told me to move along. The DA's office hung up on me. I finally decided if nobody would listen, I'd have to come here myself. I couldn't let them convict an innocent woman. Judge Morrison looked at Stone. Miss Stone, did your office receive any calls from a Jerome Patterson regarding this case? Stone's face was red now. Your Honor, we get dozens of crank calls. If someone did call claiming to be a witness. Did you investigate this claim? We have no record of. So you either ignored a potential witness or never documented the call. Either way, that's a problem. Stone opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no good answer. Judge Morrison turned to Jerome. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to ask you some questions. Miss Stone and Miss Holmes will be present. If your story checks out, if this evidence is legitimate, then we have a serious problem here. They moved into chambers, judge, prosecution, defense, Jerome and a stenographer to record everything. Bianca waited in the courtroom with the bailiff, her heart racing. She still didn't know what Jerome had seen. But something in the judge's face gave her hope for the first time in months. An hour passed. Then two. The courtroom gallery buzzed with speculation. Trevor and Heather looked worried, whispering to each other urgently. Finally, the doors to chambers opened. Judge Morrison came out first, her face grave. Then Patricia looking stunned. Then Stone, who looked like she wanted to disappear. Then Jerome, flanked by bailiffs. "Bring in the jury," Judge Morrison said. The jury filed back in, confused and curious. Judge Morrison looked at them with an expression Bianca couldn't read. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, something extraordinary has just occurred. A witness has come forward with evidence that significantly impacts this case. Mr. Jerome Patterson, please take the stand." Jerome was sworn in. He sat in the witness box, looking small and afraid but determined. Judge Morrison nodded to Patricia. "Miss Holmes, you may examine the witness." Patricia stood, and Bianca could see she was trying to stay calm. "Mr. Patterson, please tell the jury where you were on the night of the charity gala." Jerome took a deep breath. "I was outside the Grand Hotel. I'm homeless. I sleep in an alley 2 blocks from there. On nice nights, I sometimes sit on a bench across from the hotel entrance. I like to watch the fancy people coming and going. It reminds me of my old life before I lost everything." "And what did you see that night?" "I saw the fancy cars dropping people off for the gala. Ladies in pretty dresses. Men in suits. I saw Bianca Reynolds arrive. I recognized her from the news, she's famous. But I also saw 2 other people I would later recognize." "Who?" "Trevor Reynolds and Heather Monroe. They arrived together, separately from Ms. Reynolds. They stood outside talking for a while before going in." "What were they talking about?" Stone stood. Objection. Foundation. How could he hear their conversation from across the street? "I'll rephrase," Patricia said. "Mr. Patterson, could you hear what they were saying?" "Not all of it. But I was curious, so I moved closer. There's a maintenance entrance to the hotel on the side. I sometimes go there to ask for leftover food. I was standing near that entrance in the shadows when they walked past me. They didn't see me. Homeless people are invisible to most folks. But I was maybe 10 feet away. I heard clearly." "What did you hear?" Jerome pulled a folded paper from his coat. "I wrote it down as soon as I could. I have a notebook where I write things I see. The DA has my original notebook now. But I'll read what I wrote that night." Judge Morrison nodded. "You may proceed." Jerome read from his worn paper. Trevor said, "Are you sure about this?" Heather said, "It's our only chance. If she goes to prison, you get full custody and we can be together without everyone judging us." Trevor said, "What if she doesn't eat from that dish?" Heather said, "She always likes shrimp. I've seen her at events. She'll eat from it." The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. "Order." Bianca felt dizzy. They had planned it. They had actually planned to frame her. Patricia waited for quiet. What happened next? They went inside. I waited about 15 minutes, then I snuck in through the service entrance. I wanted to see what they were planning. I'm good at staying invisible. When you're homeless, you learn to move through spaces without being noticed. "Where did you go?" "I followed the service corridors until I found a door to the ballroom area. I stood in a corner where the waiters keep their trays. Nobody noticed me. And I watched." "What did you see?" "I saw Trevor Reynolds go to the buffet table. He looked around to make sure nobody was watching. Then he pulled a small bottle from his pocket. He opened it and poured something onto the shrimp in one of the serving dishes. Then he stirred it with the serving spoon and walked away." Stone stood again. "Objection. This is absurd. Your Honor, this man is clearly lying." "I have pictures," Jerome said quietly. The courtroom went silent. "Excuse me?" Judge Morrison said. Jerome reached into his coat again and pulled out another envelope. "I found a disposable camera in a dumpster a few months ago. Still had film in it. I've been using it to document things I see on the streets. That night I took pictures. I didn't know if they would turn out, but I took them anyway." He handed the envelope to the bailiff, who gave it to Judge Morrison. She opened it and pulled out several photographs. Her face went pale. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "may I approach?" "You and Miss Stone both." They looked at the photos together. Stone's face drained of color. Patricia's hands shook as she held them. Judge Morrison addressed Jerome. Mr. Patterson, these photographs show Trevor Reynolds at the buffet table. In one photo, his hand is clearly reaching toward a serving dish with something in his fingers. In another, he appears to be stirring the food. The timestamp on these photos from the camera's internal clock matches the time before the poisoning occurred. The courtroom erupted again. Trevor jumped to his feet. That's not real. Those are fake. Sit down, Mr. Reynolds. Judge Morrison commanded. Bailiffs, make sure Mr. Reynolds stays seated. Patricia was smiling now, tears in her eyes. Your Honor, I request these photographs be admitted into evidence immediately. I object, Stone said, but her voice was weak. The chain of custody. Miss Stone, Judge Morrison said coldly, a witness has provided photographic evidence that directly contradicts your entire case. We will examine these photographs. We will verify their authenticity. And if they are real, you will have a lot to answer for. She turned to Jerome. Continue your testimony, Mr. Patterson. Jerome nodded. After Trevor poisoned the food, he walked away. About 5 minutes later, Bianca Reynolds came to the buffet. She served herself from different dishes. She never touched the shrimp that Trevor had contaminated. She walked away. Then who ate the poisoned shrimp? Heather Monroe. About 10 minutes later, she came to the buffet. She went straight to that shrimp dish like she knew which one to eat from. But here's the thing, she hesitated. She looked around and I saw her face. She looked scared. Like she was about to do something dangerous. What do you mean? I think she knew the shrimp was poisoned. I think they planned for her to eat it so she could blame Bianca. But eating poison is scary, even if you think you're taking a small enough dose. She hesitated for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath and ate the shrimp. Patricia's eyes widened. Are you saying Heather Monroe poisoned herself? Not exactly. Trevor poisoned the food. But Heather knew it was poisoned and ate it anyway. They planned the whole thing together. Stone stood up, her face red. Your Honor, this is speculation. He can't know what Ms. Monroe was thinking. I know what I saw, Jerome said calmly. And after Heather collapsed, I saw Trevor's reaction. He didn't look scared or surprised. He looked satisfied. Like everything was going according to plan. That's when I knew for sure something was wrong. Judge Morrison looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is unprecedented. But I need you to hear this evidence. She turned to Patricia. Continue. Patricia asked, Mr. Patterson, why didn't you come forward immediately? Stone tried a few more questions, but it was hopeless. The photos were damning. The testimony was clear. Everything pointed to Trevor and Heather framing Bianca. Finally, Stone sat down. She had nothing left. Judge Morrison addressed the courtroom. We're going to take a recess while I examine these photographs and Mr. Patterson's documentation more thoroughly. Court is adjourned for today. Tomorrow morning we'll resume. That night, forensic experts examined Jerome's photos and notebook. They verified the camera's timestamp. They confirmed the photos hadn't been doctored. They authenticated Jerome's handwritten notes from that night, showing he had recorded everything immediately after witnessing it. The next morning, Judge Morrison called everyone back to court. She looked at Trevor and Heather, her face filled with disgust. Based on the evidence presented by Mr. Patterson, I have requested the police investigate Trevor Reynolds and Heather Monroe for conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false police reports, and attempted murder. They have been taken into custody. Bianca watched as police officers handcuffed Trevor and Heather. They both looked panicked now, their carefully constructed lies falling apart. Judge Morrison turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of this new evidence, I am directing a verdict of not guilty. The case against Bianca Reynolds is dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Reynolds, you are free to go. The courtroom erupted in applause. Patricia hugged Bianca, both of them crying. Bianca looked across the room at Jerome, who stood quietly in his ragged clothes, tears streaming down his weathered face. She walked over to him. You saved my life, she said softly. You're innocent, Jerome said simply. That matters. How can I ever thank you? You don't need to thank me. Just be good to your daughter. Be the person they tried to say you weren't. Bianca hugged him, not caring about the dirt or smell or the cameras flashing around them. This man, this stranger living on the streets, had given her back her life when everyone else with power and comfort had failed her. Don't kill her, she's innocent. The words Jerome had shouted in that courtroom. The words that changed everything. Outside the courthouse, Bianca stood before the cameras and reporters. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. I want to thank Jerome Patterson for his courage, she said. He reminded me that truth matters. That justice matters. That one person standing up can change everything. I also want to say that Trevor Reynolds and Heather Monroe tried to destroy me because they couldn't face the consequences of their own actions. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm going to make sure they face justice for what they did. The questions came fast. What will you do now? Are you going to sue? Will you get your daughter back? Bianca smiled. It was the first real smile she had felt in months. I'm going to rebuild my life. I'm going to get my daughter back. And I'm going to make sure no one can ever do this to me again. The truth had finally come out. But the story wasn't over yet. Revenge was just beginning. 1 week after the trial ended, Bianca stood in family court with a new lawyer specializing in custody cases. Trevor was in jail awaiting trial for conspiracy and attempted murder. His lawyer argued he should still have some custody rights. Judge Morrison, who had requested to oversee this case personally after what she witnessed, looked at Trevor's lawyer with disbelief. Your client conspired to frame Ms. Reynolds for attempted murder so he could gain custody of their daughter. He used that child as a pawn in a criminal conspiracy. He put his daughter's mother at risk of 20 years in prison based on lies. And you're arguing he deserves custody? He's still her father? He's a criminal, Judge Morrison interrupted. Full custody is awarded to Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds' parental rights are suspended pending the outcome of his criminal trial. This court session is over. Bianca drove straight to her mother's house, where Zoe had been staying during the chaos. Her daughter ran to her and Bianca scooped her up, holding her tight. Mommy? You came back. I'm never leaving again, baby. Never. You're coming home with me. That night, Bianca tucked Zoe into her own bed in their house. She read her 3 stories, sang her 2 songs, and just sat watching her daughter sleep, grateful for a chance she almost lost forever. But gratitude wasn't the only thing Bianca felt. She also felt anger. Cold, calculated anger at the people who had tried to destroy her life. The next morning, she met with her legal team. Not just Patricia, but also her corporate lawyers and a specialist in civil litigation. I want to sue Trevor Reynolds and Heather Monroe for everything they have, Bianca said. Defamation. Emotional distress. Malicious prosecution. Everything. Her lawyer, Thomas Brennan, nodded. You have an excellent case. They conspired to frame you for a serious crime. The evidence is clear. You'll win. How much can I get? Considering the damage to your reputation, your business losses, the emotional trauma, loss of time with your daughter, conservatively $20 million. Maybe more. Bianca smiled. Do it. I want them to pay for every day I spent in fear. Every night I couldn't sleep. Every moment I was kept from my daughter. The lawsuit was filed within a week. Trevor and Heather, already facing criminal charges, now faced financial ruin even if they somehow avoided prison. But Bianca's revenge went deeper than lawsuits. She called an emergency board meeting at Reynolds Tech. The board members who had forced her to step down as CEO looked nervous as she entered the conference room. Gentlemen, Bianca said, sitting at the head of the table. I'm back. And I've been doing some math during my time away. It turns out that 3 of you violated our corporate bylaws by voting to remove me without proper procedure. You also violated your fiduciary duties by making decisions based on public opinion rather than business needs. One board member, Harrison Grant, spoke up. Bianca, we were trying to protect the company. You were trying to protect yourselves. You were afraid the scandal would hurt your own reputations. Well, now that I'm proven innocent, I'm offering you a choice. Resign from the board voluntarily with a positive recommendation, or I'll have you removed for cause with no recommendations and possible legal action. The 3 board members who had led the vote against her resigned that day. Bianca reclaimed her position as CEO. Within 2 months, she had rebuilt client relationships, restored investor confidence, and brought the company back to profitability. The stock price soared higher than ever. But her greatest revenge was yet to come. Trevor's criminal trial began 3 months after Bianca's acquittal. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Jerome's testimony. The photographs. Security footage from the hotel that, when re-examined with Jerome's account, clearly showed Trevor's actions. Heather turned on him immediately, accepting a plea deal. She testified against Trevor, admitting they had planned the entire scheme together. She explained how Trevor had convinced her that framing Bianca was their only chance at happiness. How he had obtained the arsenic and brought it to the gala. How she had agreed to eat a small amount of the poisoned food to make the accusation believable. I didn't know how sick I would get, Heather testified, crying. Trevor said it would just be a little stomach ache. But I almost died. He didn't care. He just wanted custody of Zoe and access to Bianca's money through child support. Trevor was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy, and filing false police reports. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Heather, because of her cooperation, received 6 years. Bianca sat in the courtroom during sentencing, watching Trevor's face as the judge read his sentence. He looked at her once, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. She felt nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just emptiness where her feelings for him used to be. The civil lawsuit concluded 2 months later. Bianca was awarded $32 million in damages. Trevor had nothing to pay with, but the judgment would follow him for the rest of his life. Heather's assets were seized and she would be paying Bianca back for decades. But Bianca's greatest act of revenge wasn't against Trevor and Heather. It was building a life so successful, so full, so happy that they could never touch it again. She promoted responsible employees at her company and hired new talent. Reynolds Tech launched 2 groundbreaking products that year, cementing its position as an industry leader. She started a foundation called Second Chances to help homeless individuals get back on their feet. The first person she hired for the foundation was Jerome Patterson. "I don't need charity," Jerome had said when she first offered. "It's not charity," Bianca replied. "It's a job. I need someone who understands what homeless people face. Someone who can design programs that actually help. I'm offering you a position as Director of Outreach. $60,000 a year to start, full benefits, and an apartment." Jerome cried when he accepted. Within 6 months, he had helped place 43 homeless individuals into jobs and housing. His programs became a model for other cities. Bianca also made sure Jerome's story was told. She gave interviews about the homeless man who saved her life. She wrote opinion pieces about how society ignores the vulnerable. She lobbied for better services and protections for people living on the streets. Jerome became a minor celebrity, speaking at conferences and helping other cities develop homeless outreach programs. He moved from the streets to a small apartment to eventually a house Bianca helped him buy. "You gave me more than my life back," Bianca told him at the foundation's 1-year anniversary. "You gave me faith that good people still exist. You gave me a reason to matter again," Jerome replied. "We saved each other." As for Bianca's personal life, she focused entirely on Zoe and her work. She had no interest in dating or relationships. Trust felt impossible after everything that happened. But she was happy. Genuinely happy in a way she hadn't been even before the divorce. She had learned she didn't need a partner to be complete. She didn't need romance to have a full life. She had her daughter, her company, her purpose. She had proven that she could survive the worst betrayal and the greatest injustice and still come out stronger. 1 year after Jerome's dramatic courtroom entrance, Bianca held a celebration at the foundation. She invited everyone who had supported her through the nightmare, her mother, her lawyers, her loyal employees, and of course Jerome. She stood before the crowd and raised her glass. "A year ago, I was sitting in a courtroom watching my life end. I had lost hope. I had lost faith. I believed the system had failed me completely." She looked at Jerome, who stood in the back in a new suit, clean-shaven and healthy. Then a homeless man burst through the doors and said 4 words that changed everything. "She's innocent. He didn't have to help me." Nobody would have blamed him for staying silent. But he stood up for truth when everyone else with power and privilege had failed. She paused, emotion thick in her voice. "This foundation exists because Jerome reminded me what courage looks like. It's not about wealth or status. It's about doing what's right even when it costs you everything." The crowd applauded. Jerome wiped tears from his eyes. Bianca continued, "Trevor and Heather tried to destroy me. They thought they could take everything, my freedom, my daughter, my reputation, my life's work. But they failed. Not because I was stronger than them, but because truth is stronger than lies. Because justice, when it works, is stronger than conspiracy." She raised her glass higher. "To second chances, to courage, to truth, and to everyone here who believed in me when the world said I was guilty. Thank you." Later that evening, after the guests had left, Bianca sat in her office looking at photos on her desk. Zoe at her 7th birthday party. The foundation's first graduation of homeless individuals completing job training. Jerome receiving an award from the mayor. No photos of Trevor. She had burned them all. Her phone rang. Rachel, her assistant. "Bianca, I know it's late, but Forbes wants to do a feature on you. From wrongful accusation to billion-dollar comeback. They want to call you one of the most inspiring business leaders of the year." Bianca smiled. "Tell them yes. But make sure they include Jerome's story. None of this happens without him." After hanging up, she walked through her quiet office building. Her employees had gone home. The city lights twinkled through the windows. She thought about the journey from that terrible day when she discovered Trevor's affair to this moment, standing in her empire, victorious. Revenge, she realized, wasn't just about making your enemies suffer. It was about building a life so full and successful that their attempts to destroy you became irrelevant. It was about turning pain into purpose, trauma into triumph. Trevor was in prison. Heather was in prison. They had lost everything. But Bianca had gained more than she lost. She had gained strength she didn't know she had. Compassion born from suffering. Purpose born from injustice. She had learned that she didn't need a husband to validate her worth. Didn't need romance to complete her story. She was complete all by herself. A mother, a CEO, a philanthropist, a survivor. The revenge was in her success. The revenge was in her happiness. The revenge was in proving that no matter how hard they tried to break her, Bianca Reynolds was unbreakable. She looked out at the city one more time, then turned off the lights and headed home to her daughter. The story that started with betrayal had ended with redemption. The woman they tried to destroy had become stronger than ever. And the homeless man who saved her had found a home again, not just in an apartment, but in purpose and dignity and the knowledge that he had changed someone's life. Don't kill her, she's innocent. For words that stopped a trial. For words that saved a life. For words that reminded everyone watching that justice, when it finally arrives, is worth fighting for. Bianca Reynolds drove home through the city she had conquered, grateful for the second chance she almost didn't get, determined to spend the rest of her life making sure others got second chances too. The past was behind her. Trevor and Heather were where they belonged. Her daughter was safe and happy. And Bianca was finally truly free. Not just free from prison or false accusations. Free from the need to prove herself to anyone. Free to live life on her own terms. Free to be happy without needing someone else to complete her. That was the ultimate revenge. And it tasted like victory.